picture going there.
Thank you. There I am. I can see myself. So.
Yeah,
It's been a while since I Skyped.
You probably see me. You probably see me in green, but really, I'm actually in space. I don't know. You've seen how the program goes, but
it'll happen, right? Yeah, it'll pop up there. So you have the proper green. I have just a light green I put back there. So sometimes it's like choppy. I'm new at this.
Oh, last week or 2 weeks ago, guess she had she put herself into some beautiful building looking thing, but she had a fireplace going and everything. But I noticed that the fire never moved. I was like, wait a minute, man.
Well, I'm trying to mix it up every week. So that is behind me is the Okcr crater of Ceres, and so nice. It's one of my better points of evidence. Mm-hmm. Is some things I said about it in 2015 that NASA just released this year that shook out. Mm-hmm. So I called it out back then, and everybody said that's not what NASA's saying. Tony, we're going to have to wait until the data comes back. And I held my ground, and I said that was salt mm-hmm. and magnesium on the ground there from geysers. And it turned out a few months ago that, sure enough, NASA confirmed it after their test results came back. That's salt, briny salt from an underground kind of ocean mixture down there. So that's it was a small win for me. You know what I mean? Which mm-hmm. When you think about what I talk about, it's like a big. Any little scrap like that, it just feels like a victory, man, because mm-hmm. I'm kind of on my own with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to bring the evidence that you have, and so much evidence is manipulated to begin with, and then everybody's fighting to send out their own version of something. So, yeah, I agree with you. If you get a scrap that supports your case, I'd be latching onto that and say, because a lot of people don't want your experiences to be let out. It's like it's an endangerment to security. But let's let's roll back a little bit, Tony, and just introduce yourself to our audience. Who are you and what are you about?
Oh, I didn't even know we were already on. I didn't know if we were just talking or not.
That's how I roll.
Okay, so we're up and running. Hi, everybody. My name's Tony Rodrigues, and what happened to me is I got involved at a young age there were some people that had access to secret programs. Off-world programs that our government is running and private corporations run. And so I kind of ticked off a kid, and his dad had access to these programs, and just as a matter of they needed some personnel or whatever, they cobbled together a program, and I was taken, and I did a 20-year tour. And it's very commonly known there have been a lot of other whistleblowers that have come forward saying that the U.S. government does this, the military does this, and it's a technology that it involves taking somebody, and there are a few different medical procedures, and they can have you live for 20 years and then do labor or service, soldier work, who knows, for any purpose. And then they have a way, and this is where you lose people, is when you say they revert you and put you back in time to just a few minutes after you were originally taken. So basically I was taken at 10 years old. I lived an alternate life. I lived for 20 years until I was 30 years old. And then I was put back in my 10-year-old body and put back in time. And that's when it generates the 1,000-yard stare. But this is the technology. This is how far ahead. This is a real technology. And there's a lot of evidence supporting it. So I was put back to myself, and I was put back in that bed that I was taken from the same night in 1982 at 10 years old. And I woke up the next morning with my memories erased, but I was a completely different person. I was a person that had adult tendencies, and I had a lot of problems. I had a lot of PTSD. And I went from the top 5% of the school in straight A grades to D's and E's and the next day. And I was a completely changed person, and I dealt with it for years. And what happened was I learned about it. I always had memories that came back, but they didn't make any sense. And I always told myself, when did I have that? I worked in black programs. I was on the earth for, 6 to 8 years. I didn't have a calendar. And then I was taken and sold off to the Mars Colony for a military operation that was canceled, and then retrained, reaptitude tested, and retrained to work on basically a UFO, and sold off to the Ceres Colony Corporation, which is a breakaway group of people from Europe, basically Germans from right around World War II, broke away and got into space and colonized Antarctica, several other places in the solar system, the Kuiper Belt, and the Ceres planetoid in between Mars and the asteroid belt. And I lived there for about a decade, over a decade, and I worked on a few ships. I was maintenance on a smaller ship for most of the time, and then the last few years, I was a cargo engineer on a ship that did interstellar missions of trade for technology. So that's a mouthful. Anybody that's never heard that before is going to be completely shocked. But that's kind of what I remember, and I got all the memories back in April. The end of April, I got an MRI in 2015. I got an MRI scan of my head. 2 weeks later, I learned about the time travel aspect of the same phenomenon. And once I accepted it, I said, that's what happened. Oh, my God. I thought to myself, oh, my God, it happened. And once I accepted the fact that I was taken for 20 years and not just one night, I always remembered the night of being taken. And once I accepted the fact that I was taken for that long period of time, all the memories kind of came rushing back, right? Big chunks of memories of years. And I had a life, like I was basically a slave in their system. But I had friends, I had a profession, I had girlfriends, I had love, I had been abused, I had been through a lot of trauma, and all those memories came back, and it kind of made sense of why I was the person that I was, that I never knew. My whole life why do I have these weird issues? Even friends that I grew up with were like, man, you're a little weird. What happened to you? And I'm like, I don't know. And so it made sense once all the memories came back, and I was able to deal with it a lot. So wow. It's been about... go ahead. I'll let you talk. I feel like I'm saying a lot.
No, you are. No, I appreciate what you're saying there. Yeah, I mean, you're saying it with such fluidity that you've obviously experienced some things and has some traumatic experiences too. The questions already came to us before the show. Somebody wanted to know, why do you think you were chosen?
Well, I was in what was called a talented and gifted program, and I was, the top 5% of the school. The kids, they went into this program, and it was like an advanced learning thing. This is in 1982. I was in fourth grade, fourth grade, and we met every Wednesday in the library, and it was like advanced learning. Before kids nowadays have a Google prompt, but it was like basically how to show you how to learn and things in like a college prep situation in the library. And one of the other kids in the class, he came to school just for a couple years. He went to our school, and he came to school in a limousine sometimes, but he was a very smart kid. He was much smarter than I was, and I was jealous, and I kind of picked on him. I was mean to him. I was like we had a kind of a rivalry thing going. And he said one day, my dad's an Illuminati. What's your dad do? And I said, I didn't know what he was talking about. So what is your dad, like a banker or something? I said, my dad works at GM. He's got a great job. It's awesome. And I didn't know what he meant. And later that year, his dad came in and actually was the judge of the science fair at that school, like in April. I'm guessing it was April of 8. So it was the school year of 81 to 82, and it would have been April of 82. And he was the judge. And I walked by them when we were setting up our exhibits. And, the Talented and Gifted program participated in the science fair. When we were setting up our exhibits, I walked by and he said, Dad, that's that boy I told you about. And they had a really weird conversation. And I remember him saying, boy, he doesn't deserve that. And his dad said something like, you're going to have to learn how to deal with your resources or something. And it was later that night I was taken. That night or the following night. It was very soon that I was taken and went through it. So it was very, very soon after. So that's basically in a nutshell why. And dealing with other researchers, when I first got my memories back, I dealt with some researchers in the field because I wanted help. I wanted to speak to somebody else. I had all these memories, and I kind of was horrified with what I knew and in denial. And I spoke with some researchers, and they said that it's very common for people that have access to those programs to use the abilities in the exact same situations, like to punish people that they personally don't like, and just as a punishment thing to kind of flex, what I mean? They have the ability. And you know what? It worked, because I surely came back and I wasn't as cocky as I ever was again. I was completely changed after it.
We had a guest on a program that said they were in something called a jump program, where they have evidently technology, rather than using a vehicle, some sort of wormhole of technology. When you went off world, did you go in a ship, or were you part of that jump technology?
So what I remember of the jump room technology and the jump programs, that they can only be built in places that have access to a great amount of power. So they have to have a great power source. It's not something you plug into the wall at a 110 voltage and can jump to Mars. So the jump rooms are constructed around areas that have a huge power output. So it's not something that everybody did. So there were ships. When I originally was taken, I was taken in a ship. I was taken to the moon and trained for our first, military operation, and from there to Mars, and that was on a ship as well. And that ship jumped. That ship had the capability to jump. It went straight there. I did go from Mars to Ceres in a jump. They converted like a train. There's a train system that goes into the tunnel and jumps through a wormhole. It's a controlled thing, and then can go, I imagine, quite far. But I went to the Ceres colony on a train like that. It was a train. There's a poof, and after it, your electrolytes are messed up, and you have to drink water to restore your electrolytes, or you can have really bad side effects. And that's one consequence of jump technology. But that was how I did that. The rest of the time I did ship. And when I was returned, I was actually returned on an older disc craft. And that 20 years later, or 12, it was 12 years after that, from Ceres Colony, when they took me back to the moon for the return, I rode a disc, which was a much older craft and was like kind of in an old shape, like an old car, like an old beat up car. On the inside, it was grimy. The carpet was sticky, and so it was like, that was the kind of craft I was put back on.
I would imagine the variance in technology would be light years difference between the two. Just to follow up on what that previous guest said too as well in the JUMP program, he said that Obama actually went on that program. Have you heard of anything like that?
So, yeah, I mean, I've heard of other accounts of people that said the jump room technology, and that the jump technology actually lends to time travel technology as well. It's the same thing. If you can jump space time, you think of it as the exact same thing. You jump space time, then you can travel time as well and be in the same spot when you jump. It's the same basically technology. They're dialing in coordinates, four what do you call it? Your XYZ and when.
Yeah.
So but I didn't see Obama or anybody else like that prominent in space when I was up there. I was a labor force. I was taken I did hard labor up there.
Okay. All right, let's get to a few questions from our viewers. Tony says, here's one from Ray. It says, Tony, are you certain you did not live a Mandela effect in a parallel universe and then brought back into the current reality? The latest Mandela effect for us was around June. So what do you think about that? Is that possible?
I think that's a great question. And you know what? I get asked that question a lot. Like, are you sure it wasn't in some other dimension, or, you know what I mean? A lot of people can say, it can be anything. And I'm willing to entertain any theory of what I went through, but that doesn't explain the places that I found on Earth. So in the very beginning, the first 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, I was on Earth, and I was taken and put through an early, like a trauma-based mind control program. And this was in Okcr, it's South Air Base near China Lake in Southern California. And my memories line up with what I found. I went and discovered, I remembered it first and then found the place. Also, I was taken to Seattle. I was privately owned by a billionaire in Seattle, not Bill Gates, and not anybody that you guys would typically know. I don't let the name out because they have relatives and family still alive, but I have shared it with researchers. But I went to Seattle, and I've since found the house, and it's exactly how I remember it. I went there in 2016 and went to the place in Seattle, and I knew my way around the entire town, the area. Everything was exactly how I remember it. So if it was a Mandela effect thing, all the history lines up. The people involved, there were people I remembered. I was able to find many things that lined up with exactly how I remember it. So if there was a Mandela effect, the other thing was, this was long before, I think, 2015. Were we already experiencing the Mandela effect then? I'm not sure. I think the earliest time they said was like 2012. People started with the Berenstain Bears and things changing. But I don't think so, because when I was a kid, when I was put back, so I went back 10 years old. When I was 11 years old, I was having flashes of it happening. So I was already having my memories back when I was put back. Like, kept having recurring nightmares and things that I experienced back then. So the memories were there. They were just, surgically or artificially repressed. Yeah. But I did have those memories way back then. So I tend to not believe it was a Mandela effect change. I think it was and plus the 20-year tour lines up with what other people have said. It works exactly how the military does it with Marines and a lot of other things.
Okay. And for those of you just joining the program on our Skype line, we have tonight Tony Rodrigues, and he's the Secret Space Program Experiencer. If you have a question for Tony, you can put it in a live chat, or you can put it in the bar at the top. Says question for guests. And speaking of that, Tony, let's get to dozens of questions. I have dozens of questions.
Goody.
Good. We'll start with a few, and then we'll get back to our conversation. Okay. From Gary says, Tony, how do ships generate their electromagnetic shielding to protect from radiation in space? Please give a detail how the energy is emitted from inside and outside the ship.
That's a great question too. So there were a lot of systems on the ship I wasn't very familiar with, but basically, in a nutshell, is they're using gravity. They're creating their own gravity, and they're perturbing it in a way that pushes things away from the front of them. As far as the radiation goes, there was an exotic material that blocked radiation, and we had radiation protocols. They had always gave us. We took classes on it, and they would come and occasionally when we were going to be exposed to radiation, they would come and tell us that they would give us documents that would say that we could fill out. Do you feel this? Do you feel that? And we would turn those in at the end of the day. There were times that we were exposed to great radiation, and there were systems on the ship that generated radiation, especially on the older ships. The newer ones didn't, but basically for them to fly the ship, the main one, the newer one that I was on the last few years, could make its own wormhole and could jump. And it would take it a couple times to get across the galaxy. It would jump, and then it would have to wait a while, and then it could jump again, and we could get across to the other side of the galaxy and back. It would have to use a natural wormhole to go to other galaxies. And then it had a drive, an anti-grav drive that went from A to B, kind of, flew really fast. And there was another drive that it had on it, but that drive that perturbed gravity would shape in front and kind of make a snowplow way for debris in front of the ship to be pushed out of the way long before the ship ever got there, regardless of how fast it was going.
Wow. All right, let's get to this one. This from Smoke C. Aren't you afraid to come out in the public like this and reveal this information?
I was in the beginning, and so when I worked with some researchers in the very beginning, I kept everything secret, and they said to, invent another name, go under an alias. But then I was asked, because some of my information became pertinent in what the community in the secret space program community was learning at the time in 2016 about the Nachtwaffen, or the Dark Fleet, that I was part of, and they said, now's the time. If you're going to do an interview or do anything, now's the time. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound, safe. And that's why I protect the names of people that were involved, for number one, for safety. But what I was told was that the safest thing you can do is come out, because now if something bad happens to me, I mean, literally, if there's a reality now that enough people have heard my story. There's been, I've been on Gaia. There's been a big audience that have heard my story. So, and a lot of people are very, read into things, read into details, and are always looking for that hidden detail, no matter what I say, no matter what I do. And so if something were to happen to me and I were hurt or died tomorrow, no matter what, even if it was an innocent, I was crossing the street and something fell on me and I died an innocent way, there's still going to be conspiracy theories. People are going to say he was murdered because he said one thing too much. And they're going to rewind all this stuff. So it's actually, I was told, and I believe it, that it was actually a safe thing to do, to let my info out in the very beginning to a very big audience. And by the time that it was an issue, it was too late.
All right. From Azure, a longtime viewer, did you receive any combat training? And if so, was it on Earth or off-world?
We did receive, so the training I did for the Mars program was in military, was a combat, and I actually did do a few combat missions, but our training was as such to where we were a support group for real soldiers. So they were trying to get numbers. They were trying to get more boots on the ground than soldiers that they could afford to train, because their soldiers were so high tech and so well trained that it took a long time and it was very expensive. And that, it costs a lot. And by expensive, I mean, it costs a lot of resources to get a soldier with full environment suit, with body armor, with all the rail gun and all the information. And they had a support team per soldier that watched what they did, that helped them out in a room somewhere. So they wanted boots. And so they created us. I was a slave soldier that was minimally trained, and basically I was supposed to go out and be bait so that the other soldiers could engage the real enemy with the real firepower. And that program failed. What they found was that the extraterrestrial, the beings on Mars that we were engaging at the time adapted much faster than they were supposed to, and they canceled it. So to answer your question, my military training, really, they didn't show me how to shoot a gun. I wasn't shooting at targets. They programmed me, they put me in a trauma-based mind program, and it was like movies and drugs that I saw over and over again. And the only thing they did was erase my fight or flight response, so that if I got into danger, I would not run, that I would actually attack. And so even in the face of overwhelming odds, like a suicide bomber mentality, like in overwhelming odds, if there was 1,000 of them and one of me, I would run at them and attack and try to take one or two with me. That was my training.
What type of weapons are there available off-world?
It's funny, I get asked that a lot. So there are quite a bit. And on the ships that I was working on, it was classified. So the reason being is they compartmentalized the ships. I was in cargo, which was the lower rear of the ship where they had the cargo bays. And what they do is they classify what happens in the rest of the ship from you, just in case, because what they found is that they can have other interactions with other ships in the cosmos, with ETs that can scan your mind, can actually read your mind from the ship that they're on and get information about what your weapons capability are, how how formidable your ship is. And then if they discover from one of the crew, and they would pick a crew like me, like somebody that's not trained to deal with it, to defend themselves against a mental scan of that nature. And they had even technology that would scatter it, like in the bridge and in the weapons part of the ship, that would scatter those kind of scans. And so what they did was they just didn't give us the knowledge of what the ship could do. And because if they had heard many stories where ships got engaged, where they could come in there and scan and find out that through somebody's mind that the ship wasn't that well armed, and then they would get engaged and get taken over. So that being said, there were various beam weapons. There were extremely powerful beam weapons that were very small. You can think of the size of like a handheld laser that could cut down a forest. It was that kind of power output from some beam weapons. They had gravity weapons, and they certainly had missiles. There were missiles that we carried, that we traded. Now, these are things that they didn't have standard, but we took as cargo to give to somebody else. We provided a cargo service so that one group could trade weapons with another group anonymously, and that was something they did to trade for technology. And there was a missile that was very small. It was only like 4 or 5 feet long, but it was unstoppable once it was fired, and it was the effective blast power of a nuclear bomb. And once it was fired, it could go through solid objects. It could go into the planet and detonate far underground. It could pass through solid objects. So once it was fired, it was unstoppable. It was a very valuable weapon. We traded. We took a shipment of those, and I remember the command crew came down and opened up the crate. They wanted to look at it because it was something that was kind of too expensive for them to even own, the Ceres Colony.
In your estimation, how many species of aliens are there out there?
It's unlimited. It's unlimited. There's the cosmos. So we have been greatly brainwashed to believe that life is far apart, and intelligent life is even farther apart and scarce, and that it would take you years to get to another planet but that's actually not the case. There are hundreds of intelligent species in our solar system. There are literally something like 7 out of 10 stars has an Earth around it, has a species around it like Earth, and the rest of them have bases from all the other species, and that's times everywhere in the universe. Times I was told that they were trading that, so our colony would go to a trade outpost around Jupiter. There's a space station near Jupiter that has like a bulletin board of species that are willing to trade. And they said that if we had 1,000 ships that went every day for 1,000 years, we wouldn't even make not even 1% of that list. That's how many are available to go trade. So there's no way to know. And that's really what we did, was they would go there and make contact through that system, like a bulletin board system, make an arrangement to go into another system and see what we had. Packages that we dropped off that were like sample packages of what we had to trade for technology. And that's how the process worked.
We've had a guest on this program, you may know or may not know, Chase Klosky. She was a UFO investigator. But she had a encountered a fourth kind. I think it's a fourth kind. Where she was at a farmer's field and there was an alien gray, a 4-foot gray right in front of her. But before the alien appeared, she had this incredible sense of fear. And you mentioned fight or flight. Seems to me fear would make you have a flight. But the question is just kind of out there. Why would there be an alien in the field, and why would there be an alien walking around anywhere on Earth?
Well, a lot of the grays are actually drones. So the same way that we use a drone to bomb another country and not break their airspace with a pilot, because there are treaties against a pilot going into an airspace, so we use drones to do that. A lot of the grays are drones themselves. They're bio drones. They're actually driven by somebody hooked into a device somewhere else. And that's why they're down here like that, because there's a treaty that says that only certain ETs can set foot on Earth legally amongst the federations of ETs that are up there. So they use drones to come down. And I'm curious to see, I mean, what the rest of her interaction was. Do you get what I mean? Like, she could have been taken. She could have been worked on. It might have been she might have accidentally stumbled upon it doing something else that,
Well, what it was, the farmer had called her and her group to say there have been UFOs flying around, and they went down to investigate, and their equipment went dead. But anyway, you scan our website there. You can actually see that testimony of hers is pretty impressive. All right, let's get some more questions for you. Rose says and wants to know, Tony, are you a super soldier?
I tell you what, it sure wasn't. I was more of a semi-soldier. Like I said, I was a support soldier. I did have surgical alterations. I believe there was an implant that gave me access to their system and gave me access to translator systems, so where somebody could talk in another language around me and I could understand them. I believe that they did a medical procedure on me, on my lungs, so that I could breathe in the Mars atmosphere easier than I could normally. I believe there were a few other things that, helped me to not feel pain, and just small procedures that he did. But a super soldier program, I was definitely not trained to be an effective soldier.
Okay. Truth and treasure. What advice do you have? Well, what advice do you have about the flat Earth? Tony, is the Earth flat?
I don't believe the Earth is flat, and I believe that the easiest way to make up your mind for yourself is to join an astronomy club. And there are some optics things you can do, that you can do your own tests to find out that the Earth is perfectly round. The other thing is the flat Earth theory depends on the sky being some kind of giant television screen, and there's literally nothing that you could make it out of that would hold up something hundreds of miles long. So the flat Earth theory doesn't stand up.
But did you have a chance to see the Earth from heading back this way?
Absolutely, many planets too. I looked out the window at the curvature of the Earth and of many planets. And the cosmos is made, giant macro objects in the cosmos are one of two shapes, a disk or a sphere. And a disk is the size of a galaxy or something very big, an accretion disk, or the size of an entire solar system. And everything else is basically a sphere. And smaller objects that don't have enough gravity to crush into a sphere are your asteroids and things like that. But it's absolutely round. And the physics, the flat Earth thing is basically an opt to guilt by association, other people that are coming out with credible information.
Did you see other Earth-type planets?
Every day. Pretty much every working day we would go. Sometimes we went to 4 or 5 a day. Most of the time we would hang in their upper atmosphere. The ship would go, we would make contact, we'd go to their upper atmosphere and wait for an arranged meeting. A lot of planets we went to did not have knowledge of extraterrestrials, so we were making covert missions with their local governments, and we were trying for technology, but sometimes it was the other way around, when we would go down there and try to trade for goods. And we did reconnaissance missions for the fleet, for other things that happened that were classified that I didn't really understand what was going on. But most often, when I would go on my lunch break, I would go up to the galley. It had a window there, and I would look out, and it was just like flying over the Earth at a very high altitude. You could see the clouds and everything. Most planets that are inhabited that we did business with had liquid oceans and looked a lot like the Earth. Some of them were bigger, and some were smaller.
Have you ever heard of Species 7?
Not in that terms, no. That wouldn't tell me.
It's come out on the show once or twice that is the military's term for Bigfoot. So I was going to say, if you knew what, because I've been trying to find out forever. Well, if that's species 7, what the hell species 1 through 6, man? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's a great question.
Okay. All right. Put you all way first is Tony. Did you operate with DARPA Project Pegasus?
No. So that was that's like you got to think about that. Like I was like if DARPA was General Motors, I was working for Audi or Peugeot or somebody far away, like in Europe. It was a different organization altogether.
All right.
The ship that I will say this that Project Pegasus was a time travel project that was apparently successful. The ship that I was on very often had a loophole, so that what we knew about the Ceres colony knew was that there are beings that live outside of time space that police it. So when you think about time travel, everybody says, well, why don't you just go back and kill Hitler? Why don't you just go back and greatly change history in our favor? And what's happened is there are beings that police time travel so that you don't do that. There are beings that will come and they will put it right back. And the Germans knew this, and there was a workaround. They had a loophole they referred to it as anti-telephoning. And what it would do was the ship would go into space and it would come back 5 minutes before it left.
Wow.
5 minutes away, 6 minutes away. So at maximum speed, it had to fly 6 minutes to get back to the planet Ceres. But you could see the ship. So if the ship came back in a wrong place, they would cancel the mission because they knew it was a failure. So they could plan very aggressive missions that way. Or if the ship didn't come back at all, if it was lost, they would just cancel and the ship wouldn't take off. And the paradox happened immediately. And for that reason, they always questioned us whenever there was a paradox. Like it wasn't every day that it happened, but whenever there was a scrubbed mission, then they would monitor us for the next few days, and they wanted to know everything that we dreamt because people would see parts of the mission in their dreams, that were crew members. Mm-hmm. So that was, I guess, related to that. But the Project Pegasus, I mean, they would have came up when you look at that and you go, why haven't they changed time in a better way? They probably have, but it is policed.
Okay. Rose says, why don't they tell us there's a secret space program?
Well, they need permission. So we're not the masters of our own destiny. There are other people involved that are high above us. So the secret space programs are in charge of that. So not only does the government, they kind of open a can of worms. There's, for one, that they need permission from the ETs to do it, from some ETs to do it. Number two, they've committed a lot of crimes with the secret space program technology, and that means for them to come out, and they're going to disclose, but they're trying to figure it out the most painless way to do it. And for them to disclose right now is going to lead to a whole lot of heads rolling, because there's been a lot of interference in things like and the United States has one set of laws and China has another set of laws versus that. We have our own safeguards, checks and balances. Other countries have completely different laws to where it's okay for them to do some things illegally, and it's okay for the United States to do some things. So when you disclose, you're going to have a lot of red tape to sort out. So that's really been the holdup.
Now, Tony, everything these days is about Cooties 19, otherwise known as COVID. Do the aliens have anything to do with that?
Well, I think that it was okay. So I want to make this clear that I'm telling you my opinion.
Okay.
So I don't have any kind of inside guy that told me this. I don't have any kind of inside line to the truth in this. This is my opinion, is that they're getting ready to disclose. And in order for them to disclose, they had to sterilize the world. So you think about this, for a bunch of ETs to all of a sudden have access. Remember I said it was drones before, and only certain ETs could come down. Right. For all the ETs to come down, they have to get a grip on viruses. So we are not only fighting COVID, I hate even saying it. We're not only fighting COVID, but we are sterilizing the earth from the common sniffle. You know what I mean? This year's flu season should be very mild. Everybody was quarantined. We're all wearing masks. People are keeping their distancing. I think the best thing is the distancing, but we should get a mild flu season, and a lot of flus and viruses that have been rampant for the last 50 years should be gone very soon. So I think this is a precursor to not only a disclosure, but to having visitors, open visitors. So they're cleaning up the place, and it's being milked for every dime it's worth for political purposes and financial purposes. Let's face it. It's not, the joke's not funny anymore.
Well, right. And I can say that everything is on the table, and every possible scenario should be looked at and examined, and whatever the governments tell us, that's the last place we should look for answers. We've got to come out with these answers and our conclusions ourselves and make our own choices. But it sure seems that we're being trained, because the humans in general, we're pretty nasty people, man. I mean, we carry a lot of microbes, a lot of bacteria. I mean, you look at the movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, it was the virus that killed him, Yeah. So it could be that we're getting trained, that we're not masking for other humans, we're masking so the ETs among us don't get what we carry, and we've managed to, for eons of time, to adjust to it and acclimate to it and overcome it, basically, and they haven't. But that being said, are there ETs walking among us right now that are in human form?
There are absolutely ETs, I'll say. And another thing that a lot of people don't want to get their head around is that a lot of worlds in the cosmos, especially in our area, there are people that the ETs that inhabit them are humans just like us. There are thousands of worlds that have people that look exactly like us or pretty close. There, where if you met them, you go, oh, he's kind of an odd-looking guy, but cool dude. Mm-hmm. And like there are a lot of people that look exactly like us. And I like to say that as soon as it can speak a few 100,000 words, it's a person. It can be a rat, it can be a human, it can be a bucket of goo. If it can speak 100,000 words or so, it's a person. Once it's at that level of intelligence, it's a person. And we referred to ETs as people. No matter what they were, no matter what they looked like when we were up there on the ship. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to say is that it was standard protocol on the Ceres colony. We did have many ET visitors. They could come and go as they please. A lot of them were there on diplomatic reasons. They were being courted for business relationships, and we were not allowed to go near them. We had to maintain a distance. Mm. And now that I think about it, that may have been why. For to cut back on viral transmission, because you didn't have to speak to them. I believe it was an implant, and some of them just had natural telepathy where you could speak directly mind to mind and regardless of distance. But we were not allowed to go near them. We were always told to stay away from them. Even human ones. I met human ETs that were from other star systems that were free. They were there visiting, and they were supposed to stay a few feet away.
So you would call that interstellar social distancing?
Pretty much, yeah. But there was a red light district, and I spent time there, and there were ETs that were humans that were there with the girls in the red light district. So they didn't, It was more like a rule of thumb, not exactly the rule of law.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you open that up, and let's just kind of go down there, see what happens. But you did say that in your bio that you are a sex slave. How does that work?
That was on Earth. That was in the very beginning, and sadly, that was another form of evidence that the researchers believed me, that there were things that happened, and this was long before the Hillary emails, before the Pizzagate, before any of that happened. This is 2015. If you think back about it, I was really one of the first people that spoke about it being connected to the government and the space program. So what happened was, after I had served a time in Peru doing intuitive work, I was trained in like a remote viewing. They would give us drugs, and it was like a remote viewing thing in Peru. And I was from 10 until about 12 and a half, 13 years old. I was sold back to that house in Seattle, and the billionaire was a practicing Satanist. I was there with a half dozen other boys, and it was Pizzagate. They were throwing political fundraiser parties, and at night after the public would leave, it was a private party, and there were more elite people there, of a few hundred people, and they were sex parties, and we were used for that. That was the role we had. So. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's part of what I remember too, and it's also something that checks out.
Yeah, imagine a lot of Catholic priests around there too. Now, put y'all away first. He says, did they have three-breasted women like they did in Total Recall? remember Total Recall?
Yeah, no, the women that were working there were from Earth, and they were in the same boat I was. They were taken for 20 years, and they were going to be put back with their memories erased, and they were stunningly beautiful, all of them.
Question came in our Fast Blast. It says, how is Space Force related to all this, and why was Trump allowed to form it?
I think that here we go again. So again, I want to make this absolutely clear that this is my opinion, and I don't have anybody, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to just run with it and do the telephone game, and all of a sudden it's Tony said this, and it must be what it is. Mm-hmm. This is my opinion, is that when they do disclose, they have somebody to hand it off to. Right now if an ET lands, like if a disc comes down and lands right next to Marine One on the White House lawn, and a bunch of humanoid ETs walk out, what department are they going to hand that to? They're all going to fight over it. The Army, Navy, Air Force are all going to fight over it.
Right.
Now they're going to go, oh, you guys are going to deal with the Space Force. We'll get some Space Force guys to talk to them. What's going to happen here? So in the event of a disclosure that takes that shape, they have a department to hand it to, for one. And for two, the technology is as such that warfare needs to take place in lower Earth orbit above the atmosphere, because that's where all the weapons are. That's you know what I mean? Like the satellites are running all the weapons. It's kind of like a chess game. You take the satellites out, then you can take the planes, then you can take the ground crew forces out. So the next theater of warfare is in low Earth orbit, and it's eventually going to be in the moon orbit and high. You know what I mean? Like it's going to keep going because that's just, you have to defend yourself.
So in the red light district, I mean, every rendering, photograph, drawing, impression of aliens, they always seem to be lacking the package. So is it just that they're not drawing them right, correct? Or, I mean, do they carry?
Well, a lot of the drawings now you're talking about grays that don't have a package. And
right. Well,
so a drone,
okay.
a bio robot doesn't have sexual organs. There are gray species out there that are bio species that do have. I'll say this, that so I got to know the girls there. I got to go there quite a bit, and they were slaves like me. So it was kind of like, we were in the same boat. So I was I was one of the gang kind of thing, like I really wasn't welcome anywhere else to go and make friends with anybody else. Even the guys I worked with weren't. But that question came up, and I said, "What about don't you meet some that have that are not interchangeable?" And actually, the girl said that there were forms of intimacy that they would have ETs come and pay for that were completely mental. That there was really hardly any physical touch at all, and they said it was awesome. They said it was a very thing, and there was actually a species that would come there that had to pay a great amount because they would actually damage the girls. They could mentally handicap the women from it.
I can see that happening.
And the experience, some women went insane from it, and so that was a danger. And it was discouraged, but the treaties were as such that they catered to them, and so there were ways around. It did happen, and there was a species there that every time they did that the girl kind of, they said, "I'll come back for you." And the girl would always kind of forever be in love with him and always expect him to come back. And they never did. And then as some girls would go crazy from it. And because it was an imprint, it was a false kind of imprint promise that it was just, and it's just like their own custom, wherever they're from, they do that. And it's a natural thing. Like, I'll come back, and probably the females could handle it better than a human female could.
So do you think Jeffrey Epstein had a pedo island on Uranus?
No.
Okay. Let's get to this question here for Truth and Treasure. Now, you talked about getting, what did you say? You got your memories back. Did you get them back through therapy, through hypnotism? How did you get them back?
They all came back right at once. Like, as soon as I accepted the fact that it was real, as soon as that much time had passed after my original abduction, once I accepted that those memories were real, they all came back. They came crutching back, and it went on for months. That I'd wake up and go through the day, and all of a sudden I would get 6 months or years of memories all at once.
Somebody asked the question: did you meet any giants or reptilians?
Yes. So on Ceres Colony, there were many. Most of the shops there were. Like in the red light district and in the city, most of the shops were managed by a species that was 9 or 10 feet tall. And they had the ability, they had a piece of jewelry on them that would turn the artificial gravity down wherever they went. They were a low gravity species. And they were 9 or 10 feet tall, and they had really wide hips and kind of beady eyes, elongated skull. They had hair. and they tended to be managers of the businesses there. They did not run the whole thing. They had to answer to the locals, to the Germans, that basically was the military there. But they were very big, and they were intimidating. And I did meet reptiles on a few occasions, but I'd never really. There was one on the return that I got to know and spend some time with, a few hours with, speaking, and he was a normal person. Like, he had a sense of humor. He had a wife and kids. He said he went home to his planet at night. He was a normal. It was just like talking to a person, to another human, but he was just a reptile. And I stood in line behind other species of reptiles, and we did trade missions with reptiles on a few occasions.
Yeah, they're not. It seems like they're not really talked very highly about, but it sounds like you get along with them just fine.
Well, there are many different kinds. Just like there are people. Like there are people there. Believe it or not, Daniel, there are people in the world that would just kill you for being who you're American. There are human beings in this world that if you just appeared in their backyard right now, would have a great time torturing you and killing you because of your religious beliefs and because of where you came from. And the ATs are the same way. They're people just like us, and some of them are normal and very peaceful, and it doesn't matter if they're a reptile or not. And some of them want to kill us and eat us because of what we are. Wow. Because and the universe is a very diverse place. So you're going to go out there, just like going into the forest. You're going to find predatory animals that'll leave you alone. You're going to find predatory animals that'll attack you. Well,
now you just gave me an epiphany there. I mean, suppose the upcoming Cooties 19 vaccine is prepping us to make us edible.
I don't know about that, but
you know what I mean? Kind of cleanses us out.
I don't really look forward to taking any kind of vaccine.
Okay.
Involuntarily.
Okay. Put you all away first again. He says, I was light beam abducted at age 5. Why was I picked?
Well, okay. So since I've came forward, I've had a few thousand people contact me with memories, and I worked with some of them longer than others, where they had a lot of memory, and we could kind of sort out what happened to them. I've been able to group everybody into 3 categories, and what I found is that some people are taken by human programs, some people are taken by the local Draco, the reptile programs, and some people are taken by visiting programs from who knows anywhere else in the cosmos. And so they have that many different levels of technology and that many different purposes for what they were taken. If the only thing you remember is being beamed up and you don't remember anything else of it, then you certainly had your memory erased, and it could have been anything. There could be anything that happened. It's just there's just not enough information there for me to say, what happened to you one way or the other. Another thing, so I'm going to give myself a plug here. So okay. I've recently, with the help of a friend, Jackie Pierce, created a website, TonyRodrigues.com, and she's somebody that's offered self-help courses and things. And the most common thing I get asked is, what can I do to get my memories back? I remember being taken. I remember some vague things. How can I get more memories? And there's really no silver bullet, but I made a course with some things that, with some tips, the things that I used after I got my memories back to keep remembering, because I'm still remembering, really, and 20 years is a lot. And so I put that in a course and offered it because I couldn't keep up with the traffic of people that were contacting me. Really, I work a 9 to 5. I'm a normal guy, and I just couldn't do that. So I put that there. I offered it on the website for a fee. I've also started a Patreon channel to talk about things because we're starting to get, because the SSP subject is starting to be shadow banned. It's starting to be banned and censored greatly.
You know how that is.
So that means that they're trying to taper it down and control the narrative as much as they can, the powers that be. So I've went to a Patreon channel where I actually own the content, but it's unfortunately costs money and has a subscription involved. But TonyRodrigues.com has some tips. There's some great resources there for that.
Yeah, you probably can't see it because of the way our video is set up, but at the top I have from your website, it says recall course. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. And like I said, it's not a silver bullet, but right now where else do you go? There's no, when I first got my memories back, I wanted counseling, man. I was like, I wanted to deal with all this. I didn't want to believe it. Do you understand? You asked me about Epstein Island on Uranus. You want to wake up with memories like that?
Hell
being
no.
raped a few hundred times?
Oh, hell no.
You get what I'm saying? Imagine what I went through. And so I wanted some counseling, and I knew that if I went to a real professional I was going to get medicated immediately. I knew that no matter what, I was not going to get any kind of real advice out of some shrink. So I went to other people. I went to researchers in the field. And if I would have had a resource like that resource off my website, I would have paid $500 for that, because I was desperate for some damn answers. And a lot of people are like that. Like I said, I've been contacted by upwards of 2,000 more people that have similar stories, that have similar, maybe not as detailed as mine or not as much memory as me, but similar stuff. And so I put that there, not because I'm greedy, but because there's a demand, and I just can't keep up with everybody. That sometimes I get 5-10 people a day asking me this stuff.
It kind of mirrors the whole idea of Bigfoot. I mean, years ago, it was a theory and people considered it a hoax, but, there's a whole channels out there of people that tell their stories of encountering Bigfoot that are so believable. I've heard hundreds and hundreds of them. People just saying, I'm not crazy. Here's this thing. Here's what it did. And, everybody has these different stories. It's like, well, the internet has allowed people to kind of coalesce together in a central point and say those stories. Otherwise, they'd be so spread out, you'd leave it in the hoax category. But if you say more people coming out of the woodwork describing events like yours, then perhaps people need to take a little bit more seriously. All right, another question came in. It says, why did your job end, and how are you able to live a normal life now?
That's a great question, too. That's an awesome question. So what I was told, I was explained, remember I said I spoke with that a short reptile for a few hours? I asked him, I said, why not take me for 50 years? Why not 100 years? Why not my whole life and then put me back? Why just 20 years? And he said that every species has a 20-year, they capped it at 20 years per time. Some people have the genetics to go twice. 2 or 3 times they can go and come back and then do it again. But they cap it at 20-year increments because there's a great risk of insanity after 20 years. People that go for 20 or 30 years, when they put them back, there's a 50-50 chance they'll just go back and they'll be insane. They'll lose their sanity. So even not only humans, but other species as well.
All right. This question from Gordon, Canada, says, is it possible that the ETs have a front row seat to see how Earth's coming battle of good versus evil turns out? Are they watching this for entertainment? Absolutely.
I don't know about entertainment, but they're the same things. There's a political landscape on Earth, and it is a reflection of the political landscape above, between alliances that have control huge areas of the galaxy and other galaxies. So they have politics between them. They are very advanced. They're we're not the top of the food chain. We're not the most advanced minds. There are beings that are more advanced than us, the same level of advancement mentally than we are above our animals. And so they have their own politics, and they have their own things that happen between them, and we are participating in kind of that. And I think that they've eased up in what we're seeing now, because you got to admit that the last couple of years have been worse than ever. When you look at politics, it's like the gloves have come off, and they're really desperate on both sides.
Yeah.
There's a lot of desperation. I think that the ETs are letting us sort out our own thing. Like, what are you guys going to do? We're going to let you sort it out. And that was our freedom that they've given us to make up our own mind. And now you're seeing a desperation play out on each side.
Well, I don't wait for them to give me something. I'm just going to take it from them, Tony. All right, let's get to this question here. What do you believe about eternity?
Well, that's kind of a vague question, but I number one, I do believe in a creator God that created everything. I believe the soul goes on. I believe we reincarnate many different ways, and we grow and become many different things. And I believe there is an eternity. In fact, I found a lot of info when I'm researching my own things. I found info. The CIA even has documents about the nature of the universe, and that it actually moves more like a donut, and that the entropy that we feel, that we think the universe is just going to fizzle out, is actually gets pulled into like a different flow of time, and it's eternal. It's an eternal thing. So, I hope that answers your question. It's kind of vague.
All right. One of our previous guests and upcoming guests as well, Australian Ben, says, Tony, is the Mars breeding program based on eugenics, and how many geniuses live on Mars?
Well, talking to some other people, so I don't know for sure, but talking to other people, just other people that have come forward, I heard something like 10.5 million people are on Mars right now. The Germans did have a eugenics program. They were practicing selective pair coupling. So they were giving prearranged marriages by genetics, and the people had the choice to opt in or opt out of that program. The Germans that lived there, the actual people that lived on Ceres, that were citizens of Ceres, so they could opt in and say, you know, pick me a mate, and they would get 3 or 4 choices that were ideal genetic mates, and they could go from there and get married and have kids. Or if they didn't want to participate, there were incentives, I think, to it, but they didn't have to participate if they didn't want to. It wasn't illegal to, you know, to get married the old-fashioned way of just falling in love with somebody and getting married. But that is definitely going on up there, and so I don't know. I wasn't there long enough to tell you how good it's working.
If I had a powerful enough telescope, would I be able to zoom in Mars and take a look at that red light district going on?
No, and that wasn't on Mars. That was on Ceres. In Ceres, the entire colony is underground. They go through all the colonies in the solar system go through great pains to hide themselves. They're not obvious from the sky, but not because they care about us discovering them. They care about other colonies discovering them or other species coming through the solar system and finding something to plunder.
On Mars, do they live underground on Mars, or do they live on a surface?
Yes.
Oh, they're underground too.
There are in fact, there are huge cities underground on Mars.
Have you seen any alien that looks like what we call the dog men?
They were soldiers that we took on. We did take soldiers that were basically canine men that were very tall, and they were armored, and they behaved more like a robot than a person. And we took legions of them as cargo to drop off from A to B, and it was a very prestigious cargo. Like I guess the crew got paid for stuff that happened like that, and they got paid. It was extra because it was more like a combat mission, but they behaved more like a robot than a soldier or any kind of living thing.
Did you ever get paid?
Yeah, I did. I mean, they voted. So when I was a cargo engineer, I was at the mission briefings every morning, and they took a vote and they paid me, and it was something like $20 a week was my pay. And then there was a profit sharing, so they got bumped up when there were successful missions. The crew got bonuses, and there were times when I got like a $40 bonus.
$20 for
that
going
was
out
my
in
pay.
space?
And you know what that did? That let me get a train ticket and go and travel. Okay. I could travel around, and so that's how I got to the red light district. That's how I had access.
So you were going there.
I was.
Tony, did you have some space women?
I had a few girlfriends up there.
I mean, were they humanoids or reptilians?
They were humans. No, I was never with any kind of ET.
You wouldn't cross. You didn't cross species. Get it on cross species, then.
No.
Okay. All right. Here you go. Have you ever taken a lie detector test?
I was asked when I once about taking one, and they just never followed up with it for doing a show. But no, I haven't, and okay. I would submit to it. But I'll tell you what, that before I say that, I just want to say that personally, like if I were in a court case, you know what I mean? If and I was asked to take a lie, I would say no.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of this, I would submit to a lie detector test because I think that people are just too quick to dismiss it. So I think it's an important subject that I would take a lie detector test. For this. But if I were in a court case for any kind of like car accident or something, I would never do it.
Raul asked the questions: are aliens controlled by AI coming from the black cube around Saturn?
You know, we weren't allowed to go to Saturn. It was off limits to us.
Really?
And and we weren't allowed to go to Venus. And there were a few places, there were moons around Jupiter we couldn't go to because it would be hostile to us. So as far as the AI, I know that it was always spoken of with fear, you know, but I didn't really know too much about that situation, that landscape of that. Like I've heard about it down here from other people speaking, but I didn't really have a lot of information about that.
So I would assume our government's in contact with at least some alien species. Where's the great technology that they should be giving us by now to help us out, help a brother out?
Well, you know what? You realize we're talking to each other on cameras. You realize we're using technology that wasn't around even, what, 20 years ago, right now,
Yeah, I agree.
as
And now
you're interviewing
that's
me
a
with a
good,
green screen behind me.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like technology is
I see.
finding its way. And actually, what's gone on is that technology is to the point now where 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you and I, if you had $1 million and I had $1 million, I couldn't build a machine that would detect life on other planets. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays we do.
Mm-hmm.
I can build a telescope in my garage with something called a polarized spectrometer, which is a very expensive thing. But I can hook that up to a telescope, and I will be able to discover life and
Mm-hmm.
prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're to the point now where our technology as advanced, like garage technology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about just the average everyday guy in his garage. We're getting to the point where we can have the technology to discover these programs, whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why disclosure is being forced. That's why everything's kind of coming to a head right now, because they either have to kill us off, limit our technology, or they have to tell us.
Wow. Listen, I'll fight with the humans. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the technology part. But like I said, we had Australian Ben on this program video, and the communication across the world was instantaneous. And I'm thinking, how in the heck can these information packets that go through these wires up off a satellite down through underneath the ocean come back up and not hit something and get jumbled up? I can't even conceive how that's even a possible thing. Are you saying that's alien technology, reversed alien technology?
Yeah, the computer is all of it. All of it is. We're way ahead of where we would have been if we hadn't reverse engineered craft or been contacted originally. Like the Germans did, they made contact with other worlds through channeling, through psychic
So
ways.
the Germans never did get beat. Did they just go off world, or did they go in Antarctica? How'd they get the space program going?
They lost their land, but they had kept the technology. And it wasn't so much, when you think about it, people want to use the word Nazi or, even actually calling them solely Germans isn't fair. It was a culture from Germany and from that area. And the ones on Ceres Colony actually believe that they were from an older culture that was in Germany and Poland and Denmark, that area. Like that was their, I'm not real familiar with their history, but that's what they said, that, they're not, well, I'm not a German, I'm a European, but they lost the war, but they won the technology. And what they found was that once they had access to go and colonize places in space, they didn't really need the world the way they did. They took it over in different ways. Basically, all of the intelligence apparatuses of all of the countries, the CIA, the KGB, the Mossad, those are all the Germans.
Mm-hmm. Tony, a few minutes ago, you seemed like you sort of insinuated that there might be a hostile takeover of this planet.
Well, the original plan was to do that. So I would always ask, what happens when when I was on Ceres Colony and we'd be just kind of shooting the breeze, I would always ask, what happens when the world finds us? Mm-hmm. And they kind of laughed it out. They shrugged it off. I said, eventually they're going to get what happens when they figure out how to fly up here and see us? What are you going to do then? Because they had been plundering the world. We took cargo. We came down to Diego Garcia and got cargo all the time. That was free. Whatever they wanted, they could just order and get. Mm-hmm. And I said, what happens when they come up here? And they said, we're going to bomb them to the Stone Ages. Something will happen that'll turn them back to, it'll go another 1,000 years before they can get up here. Mm-hmm. And that was what they thought. That was really what they believed, was that the world was going to be, just not completely destroyed, but just very put back into the Stone Ages kind of thing, that mankind would be that. And I think that some ETs with our great interest have intervened since then. And I think what we're seeing now in a disclosure is kind of a version of that, where we live and disclose. They're trying to level it out to where, like I said, so many heads don't roll once they tell us.
Are humans being held against their will on other planets like prisoners?
Absolutely. And in the beginning, remember when I said that they traded technology? So the 20-year tour, the time travel, and that ability to take somebody for 20 years is one of the first things that gets traded to a species once they become spacefaring and they want to come up and trade for tech. That's one of the first things they trade, is that life extension technology. And the only thing that the early Germans had to trade that was any value was people. manpower. So they traded people to
Wow.
they gave people to slaves to ET races for the technology that they have. And so it was a very lucrative. But like I said, the girls were taken on a 20 and back. The sex trade is still a very lucrative business up there. A lot of ETs have the same dynamic where men are willing to pay for women. It's the same kind of dynamic throughout many species across the cosmos.
So do these aliens have a affinity toward human women? I mean, why, maybe have they tried lizard women? They don't like
Yes, well, so you're kind of in the neighborhood of humans. That's what you would expect to get here. Do you get what I'm saying? Like if there were lizard women available, you would go to a solar system that was predominantly inhabited by lizards, for lack of better terms.
Right.
But you get what I'm saying? Like we were in Ceres, we were in our solar system, and the predominant species here is human. So that's what was available.
They're not, they don't harvest humans and make sort of like a Soylent Green cracker out of us, do they?
I don't know but I don't understand where you would get that from, but as far as I know, no.
Well, I mean, I got that from 1960 Twilight Zone, where an alien ship came down in Ceres, and it was called To Serve Man, and they were harvesting humans.
They were eating us.
They were eating us. Yeah, they made a cookbook.
So there are reptilian species that we would be just a snack to them. They would eat us, but not on a cracker. I don't think it's something.
They like the full meal deal, like to fry us up. Wow, there are so many questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of these, but let's get to a few more anyway. How far are we in space right now? And are some comic books and movies based off real events that you are explaining?
Absolutely. So what they're doing is, because more and more people are getting recall, and they have been all along. And what they do is they have a movie. Everything that I've told you, I mean, not everything, not Ceres. Actually, Ceres Colony has been portrayed in a show. Everything that I said has been portrayed in a show, so that you could say, no, he just saw that in this one show. You're talking about Bugs on Mars as Starship Troopers. You're talking about Ceres Colony, that's The Expanse. There's something to explain it away. So if somebody wakes up and I got my memories back, and speaks about it, they pretty much made a movie about it. So they give you one truth in all the movies and a bunch of lies packed around it.
I can see that.
And then the next movie has a subject that's truthful. So,
all right, Truth and Treasure says, Tony, are aliens running our government now?
I think aspects of our government are ran by ETs. And I've always said this as a kind of a catchphrase, is that if your government passes legislation or things that seems inhumane, then maybe it wasn't passed by humans. Because there are things our government done. You go, how in the heck can they even think about that? And it's because, it's a very real technology to be able to take your consciousness out of your body and put somebody else's in it. This is a technology. This is the core of the life extension technology that they have. It's why they banned human cloning, so that we don't discover the technology. So if you think about that, if you think about you're the president of the UAW, and I want to change your rules, I can take your consciousness out of your body and put somebody's consciousness in there, and then they go and do your job for a couple weeks, change the policy to how I want it to be, and then I put you back, and you just kind of have a vague, fuzzy, man, the last 2 weeks I haven't been in a funk. I don't know what happened. What happened? Do you get what I'm saying? And they can do that with the president. They can do that with a corporation. They can do that with the governor. They can do that with, on and on and on. All of our really big decisions are made by just a small amount of people. Everything's aggregated in mankind to a small group of people at the top.
Well, thinking about it, man, is that what happened to Joe Biden? They took him out, and then when they put him back in, he was all jumbled up, not making no sense?
It could be. I don't know. He could be just legitimately getting old,
Okay. All right. And I guess speaking of the political aspect, Doreen says, is Trump and Biden aliens anyway?
I wouldn't know. There's been a lot of speculation that Melania Trump is an advisor, that there were a lot of there's been speculation that.
Well, let me interrupt you here. Did you see a close-up picture of Mike Pence's eye from the last VP debate?
No.
They said. I mean, I've seen it. It looks like a lizard eye, and I'm just pointing that out.
A lot of people show that in those videos, but I don't want to kind of double down on that because it's just so easy to fake videos. So many people are desperate to kind of prove the field that they actually hurt the field by doctoring stuff. Yeah. So I don't know if that's real or not, but It's certainly not. I'll put it this way: taking somebody's shape or taking somebody a place in government and replacing them with somebody else from an ET is in the realm of possibility.
No,
It's
I
something
would
that's
agree.
technically
I would
possible.
agree. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we talk about technology. If it's a cell phone, what it does is just somebody. It didn't seem like that came from a human mind, Tony. All right, how far do our radio and other transmissions go out into space? They go out forever. Are people listening to our shows and stuff?
Not far. There's a barrier on the outside of the solar system that muffles it, and it's for security above everything.
Ooh,
But
I'd
no,
muffle it
our
too.
neighboring, you know how they do the SETI with the radio telescopes, and they're sending out a signal. It doesn't go past our solar system. There's actually a grid.
Wow.
There's an artificial grid out there that muffles it.
I'd be muffling some of the crap coming from this planet too, Tony. All right. So, what kind of food does the guest eat, and do you have normal bodily functions?
I'm a normal guy. There's nothing different
I guess
about
they
me
want to know
than
if you take
anybody
dumps
else.
like everybody
And
else. I don't know.
I'm a normal guy. I like hamburgers and French fries, and
Well, that's
lately
not
I've been on a
space.
sweets binge. We're in the fall, so I've been packing them on.
That's not
But
space food, Tony.
not space food. They may have been the question may have been referred to when I was up there, what it was like, and they have food. They have an artificial food replication that was on the ship. I was forced to eat. Like I couldn't skip a meal. They would send me to the doctor. I literally had to eat 3 meals a day. I had to eat something for breakfast, something for lunch, and then something on my way back. And it was fake food. It was like replicated food, and it was always kind of slimy. Like they had a macaroni and cheese thing you could eat, and it was slimy as hell. Like it was not tasty. There was a better replicator in the front in the crew cabin, and it had more choices.
See?
Mine that I went to for lunch only had 6 or 7 choices of food that I had to eat every day, but the ones in the front would make all kinds of stuff. There were fancy ones that could make all kinds of foods, but they always had the same kind of thing in common, like kind of slimy, or like if you made a muffin in the replicator,
Yeah.
it would be like a slime, like a really wet muffin
Oh,
that way.
nasty. So you had coach food.
Basically, yes.
Okay, and
Yes,
they got
absolutely.
first. They had a first class replicator, getting all the good stuff. That's crazy. I wouldn't put up with that, Don. All right. Now somebody want to know. You explained it in the very beginning of the show, but they want to know about the crater in your background. You want to say that again? Why you have that picture
Absolutely. So that's the Okcr crater. I think it's something like 50 miles across. And so what that is on the planetoid Ceres, Ceres, and please go look it up. The planetoid is about 580 miles in diameter. It's a small place, so the colonies inside had artificial gravity in the flooring. The white spots are places where geysers would pop up, and it was random between every 6 or 9 years, sometime in between 6 and 9 years, the geyser would go off, and it's basically like ocean water, but it had salt and magnesium. And what would happen is the water would go up about 11 kilometers or so. It would spray into the air, and then the water would evaporate into space, and the salt and the magnesium would snow back down. And once it went off and we flew by it, and I was able to leave my post and everybody could go to the window while we flew by it. And it was absolutely beautiful to see the geyser because the salts came down at different speeds. So it went out on the outside, it came down at a slower rate than on the inside of it, and made columns of different speeds of kind of snow that came down. I remembered this in the very beginning in 2015, and when I worked with some researchers, I said, they asked, the Dawn probe wasn't there yet. It was on the way, and they had these pictures kind of far away of those white spots. And I said, that's the Okcr crater, right? And when I saw that and I saw these spots, I said, no, that's salt. I remember flying over it. And I actually remember the direction that I flew over it. And I wrote that on the map, and then I got a map of Ceres, and it was right to where I remember the entrance to the hangar being at. It was like the flight path that I remember checked out later on. But basically that's salt, and NASA, when it first went by in the Dawn probe, said that was a host of other chemicals, not salt. And so my testimony kind of caught some hell over that. But what happened was just a few months ago, about 2 months ago, NASA came back and confirmed that it's briny salt, possibly some magnesium in there, but it's basically salt from salt water coming up to the surface.
Wow.
They didn't say geyser, but it's a geyser. So it was confirmed. That was a confirmation on my story.
Sure
So
hell sounded like you were there. All right. This question says this is for Planet Xers. Tony, do you know if Planet X is real?
Like a 10th planet that's outside the Earth, outside the solar system, that's on a super oblong orbit.
Right, that one.
Yeah. So there's a lot of theory of that, but I never, when I was up there, we never heard any talk of it or any. I never heard any confirmation of that it was real.
Raul says, did you ever meet Lucifer out on any of these planets?
So this could turn into a very complicated, long story, but let's just say that towards the end, there were some issues on missions that we did that came into scrutiny so the Germans went into space and got permission to be in space by a much more militaristic organization, basically a conglomerate of planets, the Draco, which are larger reptilians. They had a space station around Jupiter, and we had a few missions that took a turn for the worse, and we had to report there to Jupiter, to the space station. And they took us along. The reason that I went on the station with the flight crew was so that the reptile would have somebody to kill while it was yelling at us. And what they did was, when we got there, it made myself and the other guys of my rank, which were basically slaves, non-officers, wait outside. And the officers went inside, and it was inside there. And that is something that you would refer to as a Lucifer. Basically, the reptile that tempted with the apple and everything. I believe that the being of Lucifer is one of these, a large 14-foot reptilian that's basically in charge of a great area of space, including our own region of space. And he injured the captain. He injured some of the flight crew. They came out. The captain was never really himself again. He was mentally, he was just completely broken mentally when he came out.
I can see that. Did anybody take a shot at this dude?
No, that wasn't the situation you were in. He had security. This is something that can mentally take you over and make you piss yourself and give you complete paralysis by looking at you.
So Lucifer had a security detail so nobody could get to him.
Yeah, there was this was a military operation, and this is in a very advanced extraterrestrial that can dominate you mentally. You're not going to do anything in its presence.
Because this thing's going to know about it before you take action.
It can look at you and paralyze you, and you won't be able to move. Like I said, it can literally make you piss yourself.
Well, it still seemed like there ought to have been a covert operation against him, maybe a Space Force, Navy SEAL type operation.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you don't have to answer this question. Somebody's asking, what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a woodworker.
Oh, no.
I'm in northern Michigan, and you're in my garage right now. I don't have I have the background turned on, but I'm a woodworker. I refinish things.
Okay, you a Whitmer supporter?
Not really. I don't like her. I think she's kind of a bully about her tactics, and I really got a sore spot for what happened with the nursing homes during the close down. I really think that wasn't wasn't very tactful. I think that there was some sinister things going on with that.
Question says, do the ETs have a prime directive?
Many of them do, absolutely, and it's all about free will. So the universe works a lot differently than what we've been taught. The universe is alive. Most of the stars are alive. The planets are alive, and there are rules to consciousness. And so there's a prime directive. Free will is a big deal. We are, like I said again, we're not as advanced of a consciousness as we've been led to believe. They told us that they want you to believe that you're the smartest thing in creation, that you're the top of the food chain. It's not true. There are many forms of consciousness way above ours, way bigger than ours. And because of that, we have free will. We have to make up our minds for ourselves, and that's kind of a prime directive.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question from Darth says, do they listen to music up in space?
Absolutely. Yes, they do. So it's illegal to take things from Earth. Apparently, there's a signal. So what it is they put a signal when you're listening to music on the radio. Mm-hmm. There's a signal in there. They perturb it somehow that's kind of irritating, so that you're listening to music, but ultimately on a subconscious level you're irritated. So that when a commercial comes on, mm-hmm. they kill that signal, mm-hmm. and so when the commercial comes on, you're somehow relaxed and listen to the commercial, and you're more receptive to the message. That's a lot of people memorize commercials more than they memorize songs. That's the reason, because there's an irritation when they play the songs on the radio. So for that reason, music from Earth is banned up there.
Wow.
But there is other music that they were listening to, and so one time we did bootlegging books and movies from Earth. When I was on the ship, on the cargo ship, it was actually a big business. There were guys in the main cargo hold that they were bootlegging stuff.
Wow.
And we did have access. We did listen to music. I mean, if you can think about this, we were flying through the solar system listening to Led Zeppelin at one point.
Well, imagine if they listened to rap music, it'd piss them off, probably.
I think it was in the 80s, or it was before that. But yeah, what happened
Zeppelin
was
out in space, huh?
they were playing a song a day. They said because of the signal, they would only do one song a day. They played over the speakers, and what happened was the crew started arguing over what song to play, and so the captain played polka one day. He said, "How you like that?" And it was horrible. Nobody liked it, and then they quit playing it. It was only a month or so that we were listening to music on the missions. One song a day is what we got.
Seems like if I was traveling through space and want to get the lead out, I'd listen to the Immigrant Song, because it's kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
kind of
it was a Whole Lot of Love. I remember listening to.
Yeah. Well, it don't sound like all the aliens got a whole lot of love, though. I mean, some of them aliens messed up. Okay, they're going to need some love. But by the way, I heard that if you make a reptilian mad, that their scales pop off. Is that true? Is that just?
I don't know. I never was close enough, and I don't believe so. From what I heard, I don't. That's totally new to me.
Okay, all right. Question came in: do the aliens ever talk about God?
You know what? In my programs that I was in, they worked hard to make us not believe in God. They pushed atheism on us, and I think that was just part of the mission. I think that it's just easier to control somebody that's not. That's an atheist, to put it bluntly. And I don't want to endorse. I don't have a problem with somebody being an atheist. I'm not some kind of anti-atheist person. I have my beliefs. You're entitled to your beliefs, and I wish you the best. But I'm saying that the program was all about mind control. They were all about maximizing your effort for your job. They had a carrot and stick approach, and they had real science behind it. They had it down to a science on how to get the most effort out of somebody that wasn't getting paid. And in order to, you got to think about it from a soldier's perspective. You want somebody to believe in God, and send him into a combat situation with innocent extraterrestrials that would also believe in God. You get what I'm saying? That's God created them too. Like, there's a dilemma there. So they really pushed atheism on us because it's just easier to control a military that doesn't believe in a God.
Maybe that's why American schools are so interested in pushing atheism to control the population. That makes sense now to me, Tony.
Absolutely.
See, in our live chat, looks like you triggered a running theme here. We got a playlist suggestion for long interstellar travel. We've got Space Trucking by Deep Purple, Rocket Man. We got Rocket Man and Ground Control to Major Tom. I mean, these sound like a pretty good playlist developing in there, Tony.
That's a lot. Well, I got a lot of those on my playlist. I listen to that stuff too.
Well, right on. I take that out in space. That'd be great. All right, we're getting near the end, but let's get a few more questions. Do you know much about super soldier James Casbolt?
James Casbolt, this is sound familiar. I have watched. I have seen some of his info. The thing is, so there's a lot of guys out with great info out there. There's a lot of information, and after I came forward in 2015, and I think James has been around before that. But you got to understand that whenever I watch somebody that's been through something and I see something that reminds me of something that I went through, and then I go and talk about it, it really clouds up the water of my own account. So for that reason, I don't watch any of the info that comes out. I don't watch anybody that comes forward. Like, people send me videos. What do you think of this guy? Is he real? And I don't even watch it. I don't watch it.
Right. Hey,
because it clouds up the water.
All right, we've got a couple more ads here. Spaceman by Harry Nelson. And just Rush. Anything Rush. What else we got here? Oh, man, that really triggered him. All right, let's get to this question here. Do the Chinese have a army in space?
So what I hear, yes. So I was aware of a couple fleets at the time, that there was an American presence on the back of the moon, American base, and there were other fleets that came and went. But I've been told since I've come forward, like, not for my time in space, but my time here, that there is an international fleet, like a United Nations fleet in space. There's the United States and Canada and a few other countries that are involved in their fleet. There is a secret fleet that's basically corporations, and I've been told there's a Japanese fleet and as well. And we're seeing now that actually China has worked some deals with ETs, and they are actually very, very prominent in the space fleets.
You said in the first hour that probably got it wrong, but did you take a train through like a wormhole?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any known time that the train broke down? And if it does, did it just go float out into space? I mean, has there ever been an accident in space?
So look, so is there as far as the time that happened, I'm not aware of, but they did give you a little briefing in case that happened. Like when you go on an airplane and the stewardess gives you the seatbelt spiel.
Right.
They had a recording about that, what to do if you felt the gravity go off or whatever, to remain calm. And they had like the roller coaster bar that came over your lap that was supposed to hold you in place in case it ended up somewhere where there was weightlessness. They gave you a spiel about that, but I don't understand. I think you'd be kind of screwed at that point. What if you were in the wrong place? If it went to the wrong place and was off the track, and that, you know what I mean, you were kind of going to be in deep shit.
Did they serve alcoholic drinks on these train rides?
No, look, that train ride was not even 10 minutes.
Okay, not enough time to settle back, take a good nap while you're going through interstellar space.
It got fast. There was a poof of light, and it started slowing down. It was that fast.
All right, Scotty says, Tony, what's your views on demonic entities and fallen angels?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. So, you know what I mean? Like, I was always curious about it. What I remembered when I was young, when I was in like 19 and 20, I read all the Bible. I read the Quran. I read the Torah. I read every bit of religion I could get. I really liked the Buddhist stuff because they allowed for a universe. Demonic beings are basically like, if you think, well, people give Hollywood is giving demons too much credit. What they really are parasites for your energy. Well, like a mosquito, but in the astral realm. So, you're a being of energy. You're basically a magneto, like you're generating energy. And when you die, you have your own. Demons are basically like parasites, like an astral mosquito. Oh. And if you let a mosquito in your room, it'll stay there and keep getting you. You got to just take a swat at it, and that's really about the power that a lot of these entities have. So fallen angels, history, you can go back, you can replace the word angel with ET, and it makes a lot more sense when you go through that. So again, these are my opinions. I don't have a ton of, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have some smoking gun or somebody that in authority that told me this stuff.
Okay. What do you have any information about black goo?
The black goo is back to the 8 AI stuff, and like I said, it was spoken about, and I think that I recall something about the Germans, that they had experimented on something that they found like that, to that effect, and that it was like an ongoing thing where they expected to get some technology out of it, but I didn't have any personal experience with it.
Now, I know you've been on some other programs, Tony. Is there anything that you haven't said on other programs that you thought, you know what, I'm gonna say it tonight on Daniel Law's program?
No, I've shared quite a bit. That there's a lot of things that I'll never say publicly, just because it's personal. You know what I mean? There's some personal stuff, just like I wouldn't expect you to tell me your whole life. Right. You know what I mean? But I've shared quite a bit, and as much as I can. There's some things that I don't think are fit for public. There's a lot of things that I've shared only with researchers, and there's a lot of people that have talked to me that I promised I wouldn't say what we've talked about. Okay. So there's a lot of things I don't talk about, but for the most part, for the gist of it, basically my account, you know what I mean, from the beginning to end, and then the evidence that I have, I share as much as I share that. I try to share it with everybody. You just can't talk about 20 years in a couple hours. You just can't give it all.
So are you now out of the secret space program?
Oh yeah, I was out when they put me back. So I wasn't in an official capacity. I wasn't groomed for it and taken for it. They really don't even have record of me up there. I was taken. I was snuck in the side door like a, you know what I'm saying? Like there are people that have been on the U.S. military payroll that were not even U.S. citizens. They were just people in some other country that ended up on the payroll because they needed them at that time for that thing. And that's kind of what I was. I wasn't a secret space program person. I was snuck in through the side door by somebody, like I said, by somebody that just wanted to punish me. And I turned out to be an extra hand, you know what I mean, that got bounced around from program to program. And so that's what I was. I wasn't an official person inside the programs. So for that reason, I believe I'm not being followed up on. And that is why I've gotten away with speaking about it.
Now, have you met somebody here on Earth that you saw on Ceres or Mars?
Several. I've met several people that I knew up there.
Do you stay in contact with them, share stories?
Yep.
Talk about ET supermodels?
You know what? You wanted to hear something about CT. So the running joke on the ship was there are species that are blue. There are some that live inside the Earth, and there are other species that are blue, and they live longer, and they tend to be healthier than most other species. There's a lot of theories of why, but that's what we always joked about. Like, oh, what are you going to do after you leave? What are you going to do when we're done today? I'm going to go see my girlfriend, and none of us had girlfriends at the time. Well, what's she look like? Oh, she's blue. Like we would always brag about, like, oh, I got my girlfriend's blue, man. She's the hottest. Like we always bragged about that's who we were going to hook up with is a super beautiful, and I forget the name of them, but we always said that she was going to be a blue one.
Like Avatar?
Yeah, like blue skin.
But they go all night, don't they?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably.
Tony, that's one of those things you can't talk about. All right. Here's Jeffrey says, is space almost like Guardians of the Galaxies and Star Trek mix? Is it kind of like that? Is it like the barroom scene in Star Wars?
That's a great question. You know what? Guardians of the Galaxy, there's a few scenes in there that I really love and that really felt like home, kind of. But there's a lot. To answer your question, I mean, not so much neon lights and lasers kind of thing. You know, with the big thrusters, it's a lot less than that. A lot more industrial than like that. And there were places in Ceres that were like they were replicas of European towns. They looked just like a European town, but inside a big cavern with lots of spotlights. But yes, there is a mix of that. Hollywood tends to overcomplicate all the spaceships. They have all these little patterns. You know, when you look outside the ship, it's got all these million panels and all these cuts. All the ships that I remember were smooth and boring on the inside. You know what I mean? Like a straight wall, like not with the big lights in the wall. Like, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy, there's always a light. There's big machines and computers in the background everywhere you go. It wasn't really like that. More like a inside of a Navy ship or a submarine was a lot of the ships.
You know, I could still hear that famous barroom scene song. Dun, dun, dun,
From-
dun, dun,
yeah.
dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. I don't know. It won't go. Tony, it won't go away. It won't
What's
get
that?
out of my head.
Yeah. Well, you know why? Because that scene had a ring of truth in it. Because that's when I saw that scene, you know, for the first time, I didn't have my memories back, but it was like really struck a chord with me. Like the place that I went wasn't that dirty. It was much more like you would go to a place, you know, like an Applebee's kind of vibe was the quality of the decor, you know, clean. But yeah, there would be, and then every now and then, not everybody, there would be, if out of 80 people in there, 70 of them would be human.
Oh, okay. Well, at least we
60 would be
outnumber.
human, but there would be ETs spattered about, you know.
Sounds like we outnumber them.
Well, it was a human colony.
All right. So what do you see as we get near the end of the broadcast, Tony? What do you see with our relations with the alien worlds and species? Are we all going to get along? Is there going to be an intergalactic war? Is the world going to blow itself up? What do you see out in the future?
Well, that's a loaded question for one.
Of course, I'm good at that.
They're going to disclose. We're going to get a disclosure event. We are. And whether they fake a war or not is one thing, but a war for us on our level isn't really practical. It's all been settled already. The most would be support for a larger war if that ever happens, and it does happen. There were wars that happened that I was aware of. It does happen. As far as the world getting blown up, I don't think so. I think that it's just, in a war, you don't go into the other country and kill everybody in the country. You just kill the military and then take over. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what the world would happen. You would see here is that you would see the leadership disappear and then be replaced with something. So they're going to disclose. We're going to get a disclosure. We're going to get a watered down version. My story might not make any sense when we get a disclosure, but it will later on in the future because they'll slowly give us more and more and more until we're up to speed. Mm-hmm. And then they're always going to control us with some kind of version of events. But we are going to get a disclosure. Mankind is eventually going to get access to space. There is an interstellar internet. Like I said, there's a network with like that bulletin board or that space station around Jupiter. We're going to get access to that, and we're going to get knowledge of what goes on other worlds and what other social systems work and what they do. And we're gonna get our freedom, man. I firmly believe that we deserve it, and mankind's gonna wake up, and we're gonna really stop trying to take advantage of each other, and we're gonna help each other, and we're gonna go there, and we're gonna learn a lot.
Well, you have a positive outlook for the future. Then it sounds like to me. So, for people that watch this broadcast tonight, and then that will see it on the internet, and we podcast it here and there, and this in the video archive now. What would you hope people would come away with knowing about Tony Rodrigues?
Okay, so what I would tell you is that when you leave your house in the day and you drive down and you see all the billboards and all the stuff for sale, that it's all largely smoke and mirrors. That our banking, our system that we're in is meant to keep you enclosed and not look up and not think about living a deeper and better life. They're trying to make you a better worker or, you know what I'm saying? Somebody that's kind of caught up into the materialistic stuff. And it's okay to have nice stuff. I'm not saying not to do that, but I'm saying you got to think about what's going to happen. What are you going to take with you after you die? Because you are a being that incarnates. With the universe that we're in has many levels, and you live on an energetic level in between lives. And you need to start doing things that are going to make you a better being. You know what I mean? Like, you got to balance that out. And they are purposely corralling you into a 9 to 5, into a materialistic void that's going to leave you unsatisfied and not growing. And you got to grow as a person. And that means conquering your little fears and getting over things and helping out everybody else. Like, that's what I would say, because that's in fact reality. The reality that we've been presented with is totally false. The reality of our government, of our commercials, our belief systems. Everybody believes there's always a good guy and always a bad guy because every story's had a good guy and a bad guy. Every movie, every television show, the good guy's always good and the bad guy's always bad. That's not true. You're a good guy. I'm a good guy. You're a bad guy. I'm a bad guy. I do, you know what I'm saying? I have bad days. I do stupid stuff. So do you. I'll bet. I'm willing to bet. So, but you know what I mean? Because
I will not say at this time.
Yeah. What's that?
I will not disclose that at this time.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, but you get what I'm saying though. Like, we're all part of the same organism. We're all a facet of a much bigger consciousness, and so you got to start treating people like that. And you got to worry about your personal growth, not only your financial growth, but your spiritual health as well. And they hide it from us. They've really warped it and taken it away from us. And I think that people should think about that. Think about a universe that you live in where there are, when you look up at the stars, 7 out of 10 of them has an Earth, a planet with billions of people, whether it's an Earth or not. It could be one big desert or it could be icy, but there are billions of people in it. 7 out of 10 of those stars. That's how populated the universe is. And you need to think about that, you know what I'm saying? We're going to get access to that. And when you die, you're going to get access to that too.
Well, I was just thinking about, I think it was it Mae West that said, when I'm good, I'm bad. When I'm bad, I'm better.
Exactly. It's all a matter of perspective. You know what I mean? Like, there's the spider is having a normal day, but it's horrible for the fly. Do you know what I'm saying? He's
Wow.
evil. He's a great guy to the other spiders when he feeds them, when he brings a fly home. He's evil to the fly, though. You know, it's a matter of
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, see, that's what I would say to people. Don't be the fly, be the spider.
Yeah, right. Hey, well, the early worm gets eaten.
All right, Tony Rodrigues, tell me one more time about your website. What can people find there?
It's TonyRodrigues.org. Sorry, TonyRodrigues dot com. Excuse me. I'm getting late here. What is it?
Yeah.
So it's after 10 o'clock. So TonyRodrigues.com. It's got a short little bio of my story, a little goofy picture of me. It's got some stuff. I did some early research, and I found CIA documents, research into the intuitive work I did. It's got some downloads there. It's got links to all my free interviews. It's got a link to my Patreon channel that's weekly that has my tell on things with current events.
Yeah.
And that's a paid channel. It's like $5 a month. Those are my newer stuff. It's got a link to my course for if you have a hunch you've been involved. You got some people have fragmented memories. My course is a place to start and let you start working on retrieving some of those. And it's got a link to contact me. So it's a great resource, and it was helped me and it's got links to Jackie's courses as well. You can find her on there. Jackie Pierce she's a medium. She's a psychic person, and she's just a brilliant person, human being, and she really helped me with all of it. So it's anybody that feels that they've been involved, I think it would be a lot of a great resource for them, and because there was a huge demand. So.
Well, you need to put a link to this interview, because I'm sure that
I'll get you on there.
I'm
I'll get
pretty
it on
sure
there.
this interview is not run of the mill for you.
That's right. It's the good stuff. I love the questions. I really do. I love a Q&A because it makes me think while I'm running, and yeah, I got to say that somebody that if I were somebody that was skeptical, so I would be looking for somebody that couldn't answer the questions quickly. And so I really love quick Q&A for that reason.
Yeah, and you answered those rather quickly. Tony Rodrigues, I appreciate you coming on the Edge broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely, Daniel. It's been a pleasure. I had a great time.
All right. Now you talk about your picture on your website. I was really hoping to see you in the spacesuit, but you're in a t-shirt.
Yeah, well, yeah. Maybe I'll get art. You know what? I'm going to have some art drawn up for the show here. So I am going to get a new round of art. I work with a guy who is a comic book artist. He's really quality at what he does. So I'm hoping to get another round of art. But you know what? He's a talented guy, so I like to pay him. All right. And maybe I'll get a picture of me in a spacesuit on there for you.
Good. And then text me when that happens, or get a hold of me. And a lot of people in the live chat are saying, thanks, Tony. Thanks, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Great show, Tony. Appreciate love and peace.
We're all very welcome. I wish you all love and peace yourselves. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Tony Rodrigues, I appreciate you. We'll let you go.
Okay. Take care, Daniel. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.